thank you very much for making this happen. It's really a great, great pleasure to be amongst many friends, many unknown faces, and certainly probably Mumbai's top financial wizards today. Thank you very much for making this happen. Thank you very much to India First. And thank you, Suraj, for helping put this all together. I'm sorry, I have a very, very bad throat, but that's 24 hours on the mobile, one after the other, and in between engagements. And of course, this one went hoarse, trying to scream my way through in the parliament, try and convey a few points to the government on the interim budget or vote on account, when Manish Shankar and I got into a little bit of a slanging match last Friday. And of course, he made a comment, he said, I don't want to hear the BJP, and then it got into a issue whether he should be sitting in the house because it was my turn to speak and what have you. But thank you very much for being here today. Suraj did mention there are this group of very, very bright, intelligent and very successful young entrepreneurs who've put together India First. And believe me, I've had a chance to interact 3 or 4 times with them. They're doing some fabulous work. Fabulous work in terms of engaging, asking, probing questions of us also, and helping build up content, helping build up traction amongst the section of society that all of you are represented here today. And I think at the next level of engagement, they're looking at going down to more mundane activities such as ground electioneering and stuff like that. I just want to make a small request. It's a little bit of a housekeeping issue. They would like to know who all have come in today and also have a tab and maybe have some follow-up with all of you. So if it's possible, if you could take out your mobile phones and give a missed call to a number which I'll just read out. It'll really help us and help India First to know who all have come in. They could possibly engage with you later in the month. They will not be calling you up to bother you or hassle you. And any of you who chooses not to be bothered, I can assure you they will not bother you. But it'll just give them a chance to convey what activities they're doing, maybe address any questions you have going forward, or any other possibilities in which you can be a part of the Modi for PM campaign. So the number is 1-800-200-1062. 1800-200-1062. So I'll be very grateful if you could just give a missed call. It's the call center that India First has set up. Good to see Suraj, who's with Temasek as an associate director. Also a Wharton alumni like Shrivar. Wharton is an institute I wanted to go to, I always desired to go to. They did admit me for a PhD program way back in 1988. But at that young age, there was more interest to see the small business. I set up a manufacturing unit when I was about 18, 19, and I was trying to struggle my way through. So at that point, we had labor trouble, and I could not go to Wharton. It's always remained a little bit of that missing link in my whole story. So I'm trying to make up by going to Harvard this year. But good to see the enthusiasm of these young boys and girls, and very, very good to see the interest that this election has generated in a section of society which was usually quite cynical about elections and politics. And somehow I think our sort of people in some form have always thought it more exciting to drive down to Lonavala or Alibag on that day we get off for the election than actually participating. But this is that one time where I think really the angst amongst the people, the anger against the system, the anger about what's going on around us has affected all of us. And I'm really delighted that in one sense, we are all willing to engage for a better India tomorrow. And I see great signs ahead for the country from this sort of an attendance event today. I'm of course not at all a cynic. I'm very, very optimistic. I believe in the India story, and I believe personally that we are going to see going forward probably the finest decade India has ever seen. I'm convinced that this crisis today the crossroads at which we stand today is only an opportunity, or as Amitabh would say, a padav, which we just got to cross the hump. And with this 1.2, 1.3 billion consumption strength that India has, and the entrepreneurial spirit that we all bring to the table, I'm pretty sure this decade is only ours to lose. And I think all of us sitting here in this room are deeply passionate about our nation. And I'm quite sure together we can make the India story tick. And I'll spend a little bit of time trying to explain what I think could be an agenda, a workable agenda for any new government that comes in. I certainly do believe that government will be led by Mr. Narendra Modi, who's our Prime Ministerial candidate. Clearly in the horizon, I don't see anybody who could come anywhere close to the kind of track record he has demonstrated in his own state of Gujarat. I don't see any other leader with the kind of vision that he has shown. And I clearly don't see any other leader with the kind of passion for India. He stands out in all three fronts. I'll explain a little bit why I say so. And I think going forward, a government led by Mr. Modi does have the potential not only to move India forward, not only to remove the poverty situation in India, but actually to empower it. I think the challenge before any new government is not going to be mere statistics, whether we do double-digit growth, whether we are able to curtail inflation, whether we are able to sort out the job story. I think the big picture that the country today needs to sort out is empowering the Indian. And that's where I think all policy, all thinking will have to go forward from. McKinsey's has just very recently come and given me a presentation. I think they're going to come out with a report sometime early next month. And they have a global institute, McKinsey's Global Institute, which works on research. What's going wrong with India and how can we improve the lot of Indians. A very interesting statistic they came up with was that even though the government says that India has only 22% poverty, I'm taking the liberty to quote from a research which will be out very soon, it's still work in progress, but just to set the context of what are the challenges before any new government. But the reality is that the government's benchmark poverty line, we really don't have a good lifestyle for that poor person. So while the government average poverty line is about 850 rupees, the reality is we still don't give them that 2200 calories of nutrition that is required to fill a stomach, honorably or well. The gap between what we are currently feeding an average Indian of 1400 kilocalories to 2200 is still quite large. Similarly, in education, what needs to be done or what needs to be spent, the kind of quality that needs to be brought in, versus what we are doing, there's a gap, an education gap, a healthcare gap, a housing gap, a shelter gap. Considering all these gaps, they came up with an empowerment line as against the poverty line. And that's about 50-55% higher than the poverty line. It's somewhere around 1300 rupees per person per month. I think the challenge before any government would be to look at how we can make every Indian cross the empowerment line, not the poverty line. And currently 56% of all Indians are below the empowerment. It's a very stark statistic, it's scary, intimidating by itself. But if you put it in the perspective of the potential of India, then I promise you it's not at all very scary, it's not at all very intimidating. It looks very feasible to overcome that. And I'll just set the context where I think this can be overcome from. Typically, we all talk of growth, we all talk of investment-led growth. I'll not bore you with the past because I think the past is the past. Just like every budget, I never see any discussion around whether the implementation of the last budget's promises have been done or no, whether the revised numbers, what do they reflect from the original budget estimates. Somehow we as a nation seem to just ignore what has happened in the last year and just look at the numbers for the next year. Whereas the reality is, in the last 3 years particularly, and in that respect I mapped out 60 years of budgets. I actually mapped it out from budget estimates and reality. And I found that the last 3 years have been amongst the worst in terms of deceit. I wrote about it after the budget. That budget making has become an exercise of statistical jugglery. And what governments have realized is, just present a rosy picture. Just throw some numbers into public domain. There's very little deliberation and debate on the practicality of those numbers. We tend to say, oh great, what was that number? The red line. Yeah, he called it the red line. He said, I have not breached the red line. So I'm a good finance minister. But we don't get into the detail. Why did he not breach the red line? The red line. Did he provide for all the expenses that his government has incurred? The subsidies, the costs on capital purchases, whatever. Did he actually harass taxpayers? And since many of you have international investments, you know what the transfer pricing department of the income tax is doing these days. What kind of an overdrive they are, just to shore up the revenue numbers in the short run. Did he actually cut down wasteful expenditure? Or did he cut down asset building, capital creating expenditure? It's very critical to analyze all this, to really know how good or bad the past has been. And the fact is, in the last 3 years, we've seen capital expenditure of government, the spending that government does on creating assets has sharply fallen. So last year he cut down capital expenditure by 77,000 crores, this year by 91,000. Now 91,000 crores is nearly 8.8% of the total GDP of the nation, which is about 100 lakh crores. So you are 9.9%. So if you just add that, you are at 4.6 plus 0.9, 5.5. There are different figures floating around. A Business Standard article said 1,25,000 crores of unpaid bills, whether subsidies or expenses. Another said 35,000 crores. I don't know. I'm not privy to the government's information on that. But whatever the number, I see the fiscal deficit at not less than 6% both of the last 2 years. And if you analyze the current year number, none of it is credited. I mean, you've projected again 55,000 crores from disinvestment, whereas the reality is last year and the year before last, you've done 20,000 and last year only 8,000. The rest came from the spectrum sale, 2G spectrum sale. And we were still only 25,000 crores out of 55,000 crores the year gone by. If you see the revenue numbers talking of 19% growth, looking at the situation on the ground, I don't think any of you will believe that. In last year, excise duty collection was flat, 76,000 crores, what they earned previously. So all of you in manufacturing know that manufacturing is flat in the country, if not in negative territory in many centers, many areas. While I said I don't want to go into the past, I just thought I'll set the context in which I'm going to talk further about how serious the situation is. When he talks of controlling the current account deficit, he does not come out with a number that capital goods import has fallen. You all know what's happening to the investment cycle. So if you are cutting down capital goods imports, I don't think it's something to be very proud of. India needs to invest for the future. We certainly gained some traction and gold imports have fallen. But the fact is we still have a $45 billion deficit, current account deficit. And he has also made a statement that foreign exchange reserves have gone up by $15 billion. But he has not mentioned how the external debt has gone. External debt, which was 111 billion 10 years ago, is today 399 billion. So we are almost 4 times the external debt which we had 10 years ago. So just to set the context, and I'm doing it at the cost of repetition, you may have heard me often speak about it in different forums, and particularly when they talk of these averages, they can be very misleading. I mean, a child who's failed in the last 2 years can't tell his parents that, okay, but if you look back, starting from class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, and take my average performance in all the years, so what if I failed in the 8th, 9th, and 10th year? My average is still pretty good, you know. So the fact is that when Mr. Vajpayee got into government in 1998, he inherited an economy which was growing at 4%. He inherited an economy where there was double-digit inflation. He inherited an economy where external debt was $101 billion, forex reserves were $29 billion. So net there was 70 billion minus. He inherited an economy where fiscal deficit was about 6%. There was investment downgrades happening all over the world in the India story. And I can read out 30 other statistics. A completely broken down economy. He painstakingly focused on reform. If you see financial sector, telecom, power, banking, insurance, pensions, you see the infrastructure focus on roads, the opening up of the airports program, the open skies policy. Check every sector. The performance in those 4 or 5 years, 99 to 2004. First year he lost in the Kargil war, the Pokhran blast, the post-blast sanctions, the Gulf crisis, the Far East crisis. He had enough crises. If we can blame global factors, Vajpayee never blamed global factors. He internalized his problems. He found solutions within his government to sort it out and take the country up the growth path, and he left the economy at 8.5%. He left the economy where consumer price index was growing at 2 or 3%. Inflation was down to 4%, the headline inflation. Food inflation was 2 or 3%. Current account deficit was a thing of the past. He had given us 3 years of current account surpluses. He left behind foreign exchange reserves of $113 billion, whereas debt only went up from 100 to 110. Net, India was a positive country, external debt to forex reserves. He created 60 million jobs from 2000 to 2005, 4, and then that 1 year overlap. The statistics are over a 5-year period. 60 million jobs, right? And you know the push you had in infrastructure, power, in the road sector. Airports started getting privatized. So you saw the fruits of that now last month when this airport got inaugurated, or 2 years back, Delhi. But the RFPs and all were done in the Vajpayee regime. The open skies policy came in that. Electricity reform 2003. Insurance opened up 2002. Pension opened up 2002. I can keep listing it out for as long as you like. He initiated the interlinking of rivers, which could have created 65,000 megawatt of cheap hydel power, apart from eliminating the problem of flood and drought in this country. He focused his energies not on crying about the problems in or out of the country, or coalition compulsion. Focused it on really creating a strong fiscal discipline in his government and leaving behind a good legacy. I would urge you to look at the economic survey of 2004, the rosy picture that Mr. Chidambaram presented to Parliament after we left government of the state of affairs of the economy. And you know, in November last year, David Cameron was in Delhi, and in a Q&A I asked him the question, what are the lessons for India out of the global crisis and the fact that there are emerging right-wing governments coming up in Japan, in Australia, in UK itself. What are the lessons? And he gave me a very insightful thought. He said the biggest lesson from the global crisis, and it applies to India very seriously, that when the sun is shining, save, put away a little for the future. That's what typically we all do. We get a bonanza, we get a big bonus, we don't splurge it away. We keep something for the rainy day. He said, The world lost that opportunity when the great going of the early years of 2000 to 2009 or 8. While Vajpayee invested in infrastructure creating jobs from 4 to 9, while we may have seen 9% growth, the fact is it was consumption-led. We frittered away a lot of money without creating assets. Only 2.7 million jobs were created between 2005 and 10. Just imagine, 60 million versus 2.7 million from 5 to 10. 9% or 8% growth is not enough. We'll have to make people employable. We'll have to get people jobs. That's the true test of good governance. So as Dr. Panadia says, UPA 1 reaped what NDA sowed, and now UPA 2 is reaping what UPA 1 sowed. And that's the state of the economy today. We have active 4% growth. I suspect it won't cross 4.5 this year, if at all it does reach 4.5. We've had relentless double-digit inflation for at least 5 or 6 years now. Food inflation is absolutely, just beyond control, 20% most years. And mind you, food inflation hits the common man the most. India, with a poor or an unempowered country, still spends a large part of the wallet on food items. So that 20% cannot be juxtaposed with 10% inflation over 685 items. So the inflation number is worth over 685 items. That poor man says, I don't have 2 square meals a day. My children are hungry. He spends 95% of his income on food items. For him, those 685 items have no value. In fact, I am a proponent of the theory that we need at least 5 or 6 inflation indexes in this country. Inflation for Shriver or Neil Raheja is going to be completely different from the inflation for the poor man on the street. Right? In fact, inflation will probably help him. His assets will rise in value. His consumption is, I'm sorry, just to reflect a point. The asset values go up. His consumption, karke kitna kharch dega insan. The rest is going to be investment and savings which will appreciate. Or at least the assets that he creates out of that will appreciate in an inflationary world. So he's going to be protected from inflation. The poor man is the guy who's going to get the worst hit. So in this context, I think any new government's biggest challenges are going to be 3. First is clearly inflation control. That will be the biggest, most pressing and urgent agenda before any new government. The second is going to be good governance, which will include corruption, which has taken the whole nation by storm. The kind of corruption we've been exposed to in the last 5 years at the top, and the corruption at the petty levels, the smaller corruption. Both are making people completely lose faith in the system. And the third is going to be jobs. You cannot have an empowered nation unless everybody has a working opportunity. So I personally feel these are the 3 headline issues that any new government will have to focus on. Growth will be an incidental outcome if you sort out these 3. Now one can always argue it's a round circle, whether growth will give you jobs, or jobs will give you growth, or corruption will help investment cycle revive, or control on inflation will boost the economy. I think it's all of it is like connecting the dots. You can keep connecting them up and down. It's the whole story, the holistic picture that we will have to look at. And I'll just briefly mention what, to my mind, is the way forward on these 3 issues. Clearly, inflation cannot be controlled by monetary policy alone. I completely disagree with this old school of thought which believes that RBI can increase interest rates or policy rates 13, now 14 times, and keep hoping the government will do something to kickstart the investment cycle and bring down inflation. It just doesn't work. We have actually killed supply. We have actually killed the investment possibilities in this country by keeping on increasing the interest rates. I think we'll have to think out of the box on the interest rate story. Incidentally, Mr. Vajpayee inherited 12% bank rate. When he left government, it was 5.7%. Just for some of you may not remember. And he brought down inflation. It was an era of low inflation, low interest rates. And I don't think it's difficult to achieve that. We've got to sort out the supply side. Then I was talking the other day somewhere and they said, what would you have done if onions were getting expensive? I said I would have put 20 plane loads of onions from wherever I could get it in the world and flown them into the 20 major centers in the country or the 20 capitals. And even before the onions would have arrived, the mere announcement would have brought the price down, possibly. But in any case, the onions would have certainly come in. The gap was hardly much. It was only a logistics issue or a hoarding issue. If you see the figures, onion production has gone up last year or in the current year by over 1 million tons. So it's not as if onion production is down or we've had a bad monsoon. It was bad management. It was bad control on hoarding probably or inadequate storage. So I think what we need to address, I talked to the finance secretary 3 weeks back. Suddenly you find all the government bureaucrats want to meet you. It's a different feeling you get in the last 1 or 2 months. The amount of requests are amazing. Anyway, I was asking him what really is the shortage for food grains, that we have to have rotting food grains, or we have to have a situation where the farmer can't get the best price. He said their assessment was the entire nation's shortage is only 25 million tons and the investment required is 10,000 crores. If I was in government, I would have done one of 2 things. I would have either put out 10,000 crores to put together 25 million tons of food storage on a mission mode. I mean, I can't for the life of me imagine a nation with a budget outlay of 14 or 15 or next year 16 lakh crores cannot think of the disastrous consequences of not having adequate food storage. Or, an even better way would have been to look at it something like the power sector. Tell the private sector to set up food storage. Probably in the initial 2-3 years they may not get a return to justify it, which is why it's not coming up in large numbers. I would guarantee a 14 or 16% return on the money invested on the storage. It would need 2 or 3 years for the farmers to understand the benefits of using these storage facilities. And I suspect beyond 2 or 3 years you wouldn't need to subsidize it. So even if you had to subsidize, to guarantee a 14% return, it would be far less than the amount we lose every year on rotting food grains. Whoever watches Arnab Goswami is, I'm sure, pretty much enlightened about this. So what we need, I think, is addressing the supply side and on a variety of issues. This I was just saying as an example. Look at gas. I mean, we need nationally a natural gas pipeline or grid so that every one of our households, particularly in the towns, can be connected by piped gas. The LPG cylinder is the most inefficient way to supply gas to your households. Now, if any of you live in the suburbs, will know that your monthly gas bill, if you have piped gas, is between 200 and 300 rupees. Am I right? It may not be much more than that. I've checked it out. Whereas a person in South Mumbai, who gets LPG cylinders, is easily spending, the subsidy I'm setting aside for a moment, at 1,300 bucks a cylinder, needing 2 cylinders, is 2,600 bucks. And look at the inefficiency. You have trucks and manual labor picking it, the empty LPG cylinder, taking it to that shop, another truck taking it to the factory. They have to be checked for quality, they're tested for their strength, filled with 17 liters, I think, of gas, of which 20% is not used because the pressure goes down and you can't get it for your consumption. Then again the reverse, on a truck, to the distributor, to your home. You know the whole story. Mr. Modi spent 10,000 crores of his state budget to put up gas pipelines to his towns. The central government said, hey, you have no business to be setting up these pipelines. That's our priority. So, for the last 2.5 years, towns in Gujarat have gas connections coming up to the towns. We've not done the last mile connectivity because we don't have gas. But the central government refused to supply gas, in fact pulled him up for investing in gas pipelines. And he had to go to Supreme Court, the case is pending. Judicial reforms is another issue we need to do. But a case is pending whether the state government was right in investing in pipelines. And then I sat with the GAIL people to assess what will it take for a nation as a whole to set up a gas grid, an actual gas grid. And I tell you, when Mr. Modi makes an announcement, none of it is off the top of his hat. So when he said natural gas grid in the nation, we have it worked out to the last rupee. And I know today, I'm enlightened enough to know, thanks to all this research, that it will be 4 levels of pipelines. There will be a national pipeline coming up to which will go across like a golden quadrilateral. Another pipeline going to the cities or the towns. Another smaller dimension going to hubs nearer our homes. And then a small pipeline which will come to our homes. So 4 or 5 levels of piping it takes. But all of it can be done in under $20 billion. Now today we are borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars only for wasteful expenditure. Sushma ji the other day said, Bharat pareshan hai. Bharat Nirman ko dekh ke, newspapers or television. We spent some 1,500, 2,000 crores on advertising Bharat Nirman. Whereas the fact is the whole nation, whether it's the rich, the poor, the middle class, everybody is dukhi. If it takes $20 billion, I wouldn't mind doing a 30-year contract with somebody to invest that $20 billion so that all of us can get gas for 200, 300 bucks a month, and GAIL, mind you, makes profit. Every gas distributor makes profit at that price, right? And look at the kerosene subsidy you will reduce. Look at the diesel subsidy you will reduce. All these trucks going all over the country distributing LPG cylinders. The LPG cylinder subsidy over which so much politics has happened, 6 or 9, now the Prince has said 12 cylinders. You know, ultimately, is that the solution? Or you need an innovative solution that invests $20 million? I worked out the payback is 3 years. How many of you would love to invest in a project with a 3-year payback? And the nation would entirely be connected in the urban centers, which is about 7,000 of them in India, with gas at their doorstep, pipe gas. And I don't think we need to close the LPG operations. So if any of you have investments there, don't worry. We moved the LPG cylinders to the villages, right? What are they doing now? They're burning wood, which is degrading the environment. You know the Indian forest cover, what's happening to the Indian forest cover. They're using kerosene and that carcinogenic fume which goes into those children there. And the attendant health costs. I would move the LPG cylinder to the villages. Why close it down? Let's move them into cooking with LPG. Poor people as it is don't have very large requirement. Maybe 2 or 3 cylinders also in a year would be enough. I would give it free, come to think of it, to the poor people there. From the money I would save from this natural gas grid. I'm sure in the Q&A you'll ask me about the Reliance issue, so I'll sort it out. So I think supply side management is the way forward. Let's remove the bottlenecks in the system. And bottlenecks are very often decision-making bottlenecks. When you heard of the investment cycle getting choked because one Jholawala environment minister decided to completely stop all projects in the country. He got removed and another extra smart minister came in who wouldn't clear a single file without collateral considerations. So we've had a situation where for 4 or 5 years, no projects are getting cleared. And then they decide to set up an investment board. 6 months, 2 ministers have a turf war Because of some historical reasons, I don't know if any of you are aware of that, they don't see eye to eye and they decide that the investment board will never be set up. Then you have a cabinet committee. So the finance ministry officials come to our standing committee of finance 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. We were grilling them on the state of the economy. They said we have cleared 257 projects and 1,50,000 crore of investment is kick-started. So after all the opening remarks like you will grill me, we were grilling them. And I said, how many projects actually have gone off the ground? What would be the number? What do you think? 0. After 3 or 4 years of stagnation, all bank sanctions have lapsed. I advised them why it's 0. I said, look, all bank sanctions have lapsed. You need to revalidate. Promoters have run out of money. So there's no equity in the system. There's one small approval pending. You have a steel plant in the country running at 30% capacity and a potential CDR, unless it's already done, I don't keep track at these days, because 100 meters of forest clearance is pending. Many of you may know which project I'm talking about. 100, not even last night, it's somewhere in between their pipeline to bring pellets into the plant. 100 odd meters of forest cover, they're not able to put a pipeline through 100 meters, which passes through some forest, and they tell me it's not even, there's no tree over there, there's no forest, but it's a designated area. And you'll have a potential 30,000 crore either NP or CDR. I can't for the life of me imagine what it takes to sort it out. All we need to do is understand the pain points in the economy. How are we, and that's something which, as Modi ji said, doesn't need a Harvard degree. What it needs is probably talking to you guys in a room for 2-3 hours. And I'm sure we can together list out what needs to be done to sort these problems. That's what we will do. We're just going to get down to the drawing board. And okay, these 257 projects, or actually there are 700 in the pipeline. What are the banks going to do about it? Where is the equity going to come? I remember when I set up my small scale industry and like all of you ran out of cash because of the inordinate delays in all clearances. And I needed money. IDBI at that time had some seed capital scheme, from which I got some 4-5 lakh or 10 lakh rupees as seed capital. Maybe the government needs to have a 50,000 crore rupees seed capital fund. We could pick up equity in all these stalled projects so that the system has the confidence and all of you investors get confidence that these projects will kickstart. Bankers can't be told that every CDR or NPA is going to be investigated by CBI. He's from State Bank. They'll say, man, we won't work anymore. Why the hell do I have to sign any fine? I get paid for not doing any work. But if I do any work, I may go to jail. And not now, 10 years later. Why should I give any additional loan? जिस पुराने ऑफिसर ने किया वो भुगतेगा, मैं तो आज निकल जाएंगे. And then even worse, the central government Ministry of Finance has taken out a circular, if any of you are aware, that if a promoter has a NPA, his entire group project should not be funded anymore. Now it may sound very populist and very nice to somebody on the, maybe on a news channel, but if God forbid one of you ladies or gentlemen decided in some bad moment of your life to invest in a power plant thinking India is that great story and power is the future, which it is, but we messed it up. But if you have one investment in power which is stuck because some coal mine was illegally allotted or has got stuck in the system or the environment clearance is not there, and I can list out 50 other reasons why that project is stuck. Doesn't have a PPA. If it has a PPA, the power utility doesn't have money to pay for the power, or the gas is not there, whatever else. So if that one project of yours went bad, your technology project, your manufacturing of auto ancillaries, why should all of them have to be NPA? I can't figure it out. I mean, 6 profitable businesses you want to choke because of one business where it was an error of judgment. You trusted the government and it failed to deliver. So I often say, force majeure is no more an act of God. God is very benevolent on all of us. It's more an act of government. We're going to redefine force majeure probably if we come in as act of government, not the act of God. So I think if we focused on the supply side, inflation is not difficult to tackle. Interest rates certainly will have to be in whatever form, I don't know, I'm not in government, but we'll have to sit down with the bankers, with the central bank. I'll have to look back in history what Yashwant Sinha and Jaswant Singh did. Or if they again come back into that seat, they will remember what they did and possibly act on that. But clearly, interest rates have to be set right. Inflation has to be controlled. Debottlenecking has to be done. The pain points in reviving the investment cycle have to be addressed. And from that, if we can have an economy of surpluses, not shortages, that's what I think will sort out the inflation story. And going forward, that will automatically give you that growth that we are all looking for. Good governance, the fight against corruption is very, very critical to any agenda of a new government. Again, Modi comes with a track record. He doesn't make promises. If any of you has done business in Gujarat, I mean, somebody may come up and tell me, you know, that district collector took some 5,000 rupees from me, I don't know. But I'll tell you my own personal experience. I've been treasurer of this party for many years. So you can imagine the kind of people I get approached by who are asking for help all over the place. And I'm saying it openly, I'll put this on YouTube, I have no problem saying that. I have not once had to refer anybody to Mr. Modi if he had a problem in Gujarat. That go and meet Mr. Modi or set up appointments or anything. I would tell whoever approached me, write out a mail. The email ID is osd2cm@gmail.com or whatever. Write out a mail expressing your problem. And one of three things will happen. A, either your problem will get resolved, if it is on merits. B, if they are unable to fully grasp it or understand it or it needs more information, you will get a call from the concerned department asking you to present more information or come and meet and try and sort it out across the table. C, if it's an issue which requires escalating at the top, the CM's office will give you a call, ask you your convenience, and not the CM's convenience. He will not impose an interview or an appointment on you. He will ask you your convenience to come down and have a cup of tea, chai pe charcha with the CM, and explain the issue to him. I promise you, whoever went like this, before he could escalate issues, the CM asked him the right questions because he would have studied the case before calling you. If on merits your case deserved to be solved, it would have got solved. If on merits it did not deserve to get solved, nobody on earth, least at all a minion like me, could ever get it resolved. That is good governance. You go to meet Mr. Modi, he has no file on his table. He doesn't believe in escalating everything to the top. कि मेरे पास आओ, कुछ भी clearance चाहिए, कुछ भी काम. Rules are set, guidelines are in public domain. I was with a jeweler in Kerala. Kerala, BJP has no presence. This time we'll have a presence. I had gone down 4 weeks ago to Kerala, met a very large jeweler who has probably one of the largest chains in India. Young man, 40-year-old, foreign return. He was passionate. He said, I have 4 or 5 showrooms in Gujarat. It was pleasure doing business. He said, every approval was on the net. There were timelines. We knew how many days we get the approval. We got it on that day. He said, I have not spent 1 rupee of pride. Not 1 rupee of pride. I have all 5 operations in place. No tax official comes and harasses me. It's his example. If anybody wants, I may have his number on my mobile. I'll be happy to give it to you. You can call him. An industrialist in Mumbai, whose family is a communist family, members of parliament in the past. I went to him some time back and was having a chat. Said, Piyush, मैं तो बहुत दुखी हूँ, मेरे को गुजरात में बहुत तकलीफ है. On site. And what have I got into? He said, well, you had to pay a bribe. I said, yeah, I had to pay a bribe. I got bloody worried. He has large business in Gujarat. I said, was it very large? Yeah, it was quite large. I said, what, 10 crore रुपया खर्च हो गया? He said, नहीं थोड़ा कम. I said, what, 1 crore रुपया? नहीं थोड़ा कम. करते करते we came down to 5,000 bucks. He said, I had to spend 5,000 bucks. His business must be several thousand crores in Gujarat. He was so excited about his business in Gujarat. And don't worry, it's not, some people often say, can the Gujarat model be replicated? I don't think good governance is about models, it's about intention. It's about your own commitment. It's about your own internal self. You can only internalize good governance. After all, it's the same officers. The bureaucracy is the same. IAS officers from all over the country go to different parts of the country. तो पूरे देश के लोग वहाँ पे ऑफिसर्स हैं, IAS हो, IPS हो, जो भी हो, सरकार के सिस्टम सेम है. The laws of the land are the same. Labor laws, whatever, environment laws. It's the commitment of leadership. That's what makes the difference. And I think with that track record that he has demonstrated over 12 years in Gujarat, I'm fairly confident that with his philosophy of management by exception, he only believes that if there is reason for something to be escalated to the top, it goes up. Sort it out at the lowest level. And anybody who doesn't perform is held accountable. That's the kind of governance. I mean, a tax official, I said it in the DTC report which we made, that income tax officials or tax officials of any genre cannot be allowed to just pass assessments at whim and fancy and then keep escalating it in courts till 25 years later it gets sorted out in the Supreme Court. I said we need to put in place a system where if a tax official is found to have made 3 erroneous judgments, he'll be hauled up, he'll be questioned, he'll be audited. That on what basis did you make these judgments which are losing at every level of judicial scrutiny? And if a case falls 2 times, 2 levels of appeal, put an end to it. Why does everything have to be escalated to the Supreme Court? Let's bring an end to litigation. You know, government is the largest litigator in India. And I asked some officials of service tax and excise the other day in another such meeting, why do you do that? They said, sir, if we stop a case at any level, then after 10, 15 years of retirement, if something goes wrong or an audit query comes, the CBI comes, knocks on our door. Why did you stop this case? Why did you not? You took a bribe and probably didn't go to appeal. So we can't do it. I think we can. I have a simple solution for that. I mean, I don't know the nitty-gritties of government. I've never been in government. But I think we can do a simple thing. Every discretionary decision that we have to take, whether as a politician, as a bureaucrat, should be with a speaking order. I have to write down reasons why I gave this order. And I should suo moto put it up for public consumption. Put it up on the net. Why I took a discretionary decision. The moment that is so, I will be scared taking an illegal decision. I will be scared taking a decision for collateral reasons. And I will not be scared if I have honesty and conviction of my own. I will not be scared that 5 years, 10 years later, an RTI can come up with some fancy papers and I could be hauled up in an inquiry. So it was in public domain. If anybody has a problem, sort it out now. So it's not about Gujarat model or any other model. It's about leadership. And I think Modi has demonstrated with his track record. My entire leadership is honest, and I say that with confidence. I've often said it even when I had the first meeting of India First, that look, don't then point out one case and tell me, oh, but what about that one case? We are in a 1.2 billion people country. My party is a party which has more than 30 million workers and leaders and whatnot. We will have, and they all come from the same society from which the rest of India comes. So if there will be a few black eggs, we'll sort that out. But if you look at the big picture, on a scale of 1 to 10 of the shades of grey, clearly the BJP and particularly its top leadership stands out by a margin, by a wide margin, with our actions and our performance in terms of good governance, in terms of honesty and integrity. And the last issue I escalated was of jobs. I think 20 crore jobs is what this nation needs to do in the next 10 years. I have come to this figure with a great deal of research and study. I believe the underemployment in the agricultural sector is huge. We've got to declog the 50% of people who are subsisting on agriculture and reduce the burden on our farms. We actually need to create new 100 cities. We need to create urban agglomerates which help decongest the Mumbai and Delhis of the world, or the Bangalore where it takes 2 hours to reach from the airport any place. We need to have places where the urban aspiration of young India can be met in a much better environment, cities which are planned, cities which are good transport infrastructure, where utilities like good drinking, potable water, power, gas, housing, all of that is sorted out. And that can kickstart the investment cycle significantly. Vajpayee had tried to do that with the SEZ policy. Unfortunately, this government messed it around. They've approved some 700 odd SEZs all over the country. So today you can have a 25-acre SEZ. I don't know what an SEZ concept is and what a 25-acre, maybe an export unit is. You can't have SEZs in 5 lakh square feet or 25 acres. You need to probably emulate Shenzhen or Guangzhou, some of the large format urban new centers which can become hubs for growth, maybe an electronic hub, maybe an auto ancillary hub. You need to create 30, 40 tourism circuits in this country, maybe 50. When India till date has 6.87 million foreign tourists coming to India. Isn't it a shame? Turkey, most of us have been to Turkey. Istanbul, one or two more smaller places, I don't remember those, M se kuch hai, C se kuch hai, Capital. The Blue Mosque, Bosphorus, drink-led shopping, and the carpets. I don't know beyond that what I did there. 33 million foreign tourists. France has 83 million foreign tourists. What the hell does India not have that we cannot get 50, 60, 80, 100 million tourists? Why should we be earning $17 billion? Why can't we be earning $250 billion out of tourism? Tourism provides the maximum jobs at all levels. The Planning Commission says 78 jobs for every million rupees. I suspect that's too aggressive. But I still believe if we only sort out the Buddhist circuit, we can get 4 or 5 million tourists coming every year from the Buddhist circuit. Bodh Gaya, those regions in Bihar and Calcutta and maybe Nepal, UP. Tourism itself, in my opinion, can be that big low-hanging fruit which if we encash well, can give you maybe 100 million jobs in this country. And for all of these jobs, whether in manufacturing, whether in tourism, whether in infrastructure creation and housing, these are my 4 pet themes where I think that 200 million jobs can be created. We need a skilled nation. We need to have a skill development program which creates 200 million skilled workforce. After all, we need employable people. I suspect, Raja, you can't get a maid in Mumbai if you want a maid today. All of us have shortage of drivers. Even cleaning the floor is an art. I mean, you can jolly well just clean from here, take it there and clean from there, like we do with Manrega. Dig a hole, fill it up again. Dig a hole, fill it up again. But if we can dovetail Manrega, for instance, with the skill development program, you have 40,000 crores every year. Can we not use 40,000 crores at 20,000 bucks a piece, a person, to skill 2 crore people every year? And in 10 years, skill 20 crore people, make them employable. Because if we want tourism, if we want manufacturing, we want housing, we need skilled people. And mind you, my concern is you can't skill people asking them to come for a skill, even though it's free, on an empty stomach. After all, a poor man today says, hell, I don't have 2 square meals a day, my kid is crying at home for milk, I have an old father who's in hospital, I need some money to survive. Pay him a stipend to come and learn a skill. I'm happy to do that. I'll pay 3,000-4,000 rupees every month to a person to go for 6 months and become a good carpenter. And then do a job which will probably earn him 10,000 rupees a month. may empower him to stand on his own feet. Money is not the problem. Our problem is thinking. We only talk of outlays. We are just not bothered about the outcomes. We have no focus on outcomes. I think what any new government got to do is the 3 or 4 pet themes of Modi. Minimum government, maximum governance. Set your governance agenda right, get government out of your laps. Of course, I believe another party leader, an upcoming party leader, recently copied that phrase, which Modi has been using ad nauseum for the last 10 or 12 years. The second is we'll have to look at speed, skill and scale. India can't plan for 10 years, we'll have to plan for 50 years. We'll have to look at scale. We'll have to do it fast, we don't have the luxury of time in India. And skill will have to be the bulwark on which all of the programs ride. We'll also have to look at outcomes rather than outlays. Can't draw satisfaction that we spend 3 lakh crores on social welfare schemes. And then their erstwhile Prime Minister says 85% went down. Or even McKinsey's study shows that 50% of government spending is unproductive. Now we'll have to look at outcomes. It doesn't matter you spend any amount of money. What did you achieve? Did you dig a hole or did you create assets? Of course, on Manreka, I have another pet theme of mine. I'm becoming so repetitive that I could probably keep quiet and just play a recording of my last speech. Gujarat power tariffs increase over the last 12 years is the least in the country. I challenge any of you to research that and prove me wrong. 12 years, power tariffs in Gujarat increased by the least amount. The discoms there have turned from a loss of 2,500 crores to a profit of 500 crores in 2012. I'm sure they made a profit in 13 also, I don't know the figure. And we have 24/7 power to everybody in Gujarat. It's achievable. And how did it all start? He filed 100,000 FIRs against power theft. He didn't say that, oh, ये BJP वाला है, क्या पे मत करो, उसके आप whoever is involved. After all, he won with 50% of the vote in Gujarat in 2002. So, out of that 100,000 people who FIRs were filed, there must have been his voters also. He was absolutely for power theft is a no-no in my state. He visualized what the pain points were. So you had different feeder lines for agriculture, for households, for industry. So everybody gets 24-hour power now, when he needs it at reasonable cost. And free power is equal to no power. He is very firm. People will be happy to pay for quality service if that price is reasonable. That's the kind of honesty that we require. We don't give any excuses of compulsions of coalition politics, and those things are dishonest. I mean, there was nothing to stop, for example, the cancellation of licenses if the process was vitiated. You can't say that, no, I had no control over a minister in my cabinet. So I think the time has come where country starts demanding a better government, a good government, a proven track record of the leader, and we focus our energies on actually bringing manufacturing up to create more jobs, actually seeing how we can create 100 million homes for the poor. I have a whole project in my mind for that. I've lost my voice now, I can't speak anymore. Tourism and infrastructure. I mean, just a small aside, are you guys aware there are 464 airstrips in India? 464. Just like in telecom, we leapfrogged into today's technology. I see civil aviation as that tool to connect India by leapfrogging straight into the aviation age. If you remember the last 2 years of NDA, airfare was cheaper than air-conditioned rail fare. I don't know how many of you remember that. It can be done even today by expanding the market. I mean, if Delhi airport or Mumbai airport, and beautiful airports. I saw Mumbai last night. I actually went 2 o'clock in the night, also dropped my daughter, which I wouldn't have otherwise, to see the airport. Sanjay has been telling me for a year to come.
it made me feel really, really proud. In my opinion, I have not seen a better airport anywhere in the world. Anywhere. And I've reasonably traveled. Not as much as you gentlemen, ladies, but I have not seen an airport as good. I may have certain concerns about certain things, but I won't take that up now. But the bigger picture is, can we not expand the market and bring down the cost? Otherwise, the cost of the airport is X. You need a interest to be serviced. You need a return for the promoter. And all of that we are going to pay. So a 8,000 crore rupee project became 12,000 crores. Or the Mumbai Bandra Worli ceiling became 400 crores to 1,680 crores. Nobody is paying for it. We are paying for it. And our next generation, and possibly in the case of the ceiling, 3 generations. So what we need to do is time-bound implementation with honesty and expand the market. So if we were to make only 100 of those airports operational, airstrips, I mapped it out on a map of India. You would have an operating airport at a distance of between 100 and 150 kilometers across India. You can do the math. India is about 34 lakh square kilometers. Whoever is the math guy here can just do the math. Existing 50 airports, another 100. And by the way, you need only 100 crores to upgrade an airstrip to airport level. A decent airport like in Baroda, for example, I just came Saturday from there. Decent airport, basic facilities, small shopping area, maybe the size of this room, a customs and immigration, baggage facilities, 2 or 3 aero bridges, or even no aero bridge, it doesn't matter. 100 crores. And you connect the whole of India, you can go anywhere. Imagine the boost it will give to tourism, to our businesses, to our manufacturing. Mobility of labor, mobility of management, mobility of foreign technicians. I'm quite convinced. Skill the people. Incidentally, I'm sorry, I had started on Manrega, I got diverted somewhere along the line. My second scheme on Manrega is convert it into a viability gap fund. You're all aware of the VGF, right? So there are so many infrastructure projects which are viable at a certain value based on the usage. Maybe a highway has so many cars, the right price is 50 rupees, and at 300 crores it's a viable project, but the actual cost is 600 or 500 or 400. That difference, if somebody pays as a viability gap fund, that project suddenly becomes viable. And the experience is VGF between 10 to 35% is all that it requires to make many projects viable, including the Trans-Harbour Link, which has remained a dream for 15 years of this government, the Maharashtra government. Another government where honesty is being claimed after many years of dishonesty, but it has only brought the whole state to a standstill. Now look at what that VGF could do. 40,000 crores of Manrega, if it was a VGF, could have seeded over 120 or 150,000 crores of projects every year. And if any of you, and I'm sure all of you do infra projects usually, not only do they consume steel, cement, khadi, all of that, which gives a boost to the whole economy, but it has a labor come management component of about 40%. I don't know if I'm far off the mark or I'm reasonably ballpark. Maybe 30%, I don't know. But at 30 or 40%, you will again be giving back to the system wages of 40,000 crores, maybe more. So it's a win-win for the nation. You're creating infrastructure, you're still giving jobs. That's the kind of innovative thinking I think the BJP brings to the table. That is what is our assurance and commitment to each one of you. And I think if our focus remains on inflation, good governance, and jobs, growth can only be natural byproduct, and then it will not be routine growth or Hindu rate of growth. It will be a solid, I personally think, not only double digit, but much better than that. Not 3 digits, but much better than the 10% I made. I'm sorry I took far more than I had promised, but it's a great opportunity to meet such an illustrious set of people. Mr. Modi is meeting a similar audience from all over the world on the 27th. He's going to articulate some of his specific programs in some detail. After all, more detail comes only in the vision document or the manifesto. But you'll hear a lot more from us in the coming months on specific projects. I've actually penned down a book, but I don't know if I'll be able to release it before the election or no, on actual doable agenda for getting India out of this trap. But I would only urge all of you, this is a time for all of us to act. This is the challenge before all of us. Are we going to be passive listeners to a talk today, go back home and hope for the best or pray for the best? Or are we going to do something about it? That's the challenge before all of us as a nation. Vote for a stable and decisive government. Don't let the vote get wasted on candidates or parties, very often maybe well-meaning or good, but who cannot impact the future of the nation. Ultimately, unless Mr. Modi gets 275, and I promise you he will, we are working day and night for that, he will have to be dependent on another, that Atalji ka famous saying, kahin ka eent, kahin ka roda, Bhanumati ne kumbha joda, that he had said it in 96, I think. So we don't want to give Modi that kind of a situation. You may have some concerns about the local party or candidate. Some of us in our areas may not have a BJP but an alliance candidate. We may not be happy with the BJP candidate sometimes. You may find another candidate maybe better. Remember, don't waste your vote. Think about it and please advise your friends, your family, your neighbors, your employees. Advise them how important it is this time to vote wisely. That's all I can urge from your side. Thank you very much for this patient listening.
Thank you so much, Piyush. I mean, the most enjoyable part of attending Piyush's speeches, and I've attended a couple of them so far, is that you speak our language of facts and figures, and you really connect with the audience here. We're going to open the floor for questions. I'm going to take the luxury of just kickstarting the first question, and I'll give Piyush the question you sort of alluded to, and I'll phrase it a little differently, the whole reliance issue. I think what's interesting in the country is that philosophically, we're still very suspicious of our businessmen. We're still very suspicious of the private sector. And too often it's too easy for many parties to just come up with populist policies. We saw this in Delhi. I'm sure when the BJP is formulating its own policies, you face a lot of the same sort of issues. How do you work around this? Because surely going to the masses and giving freebies will get you more votes. So how do you decide, and how do you think of this?
Very clearly when Modi filed that 100,000 FIRs, it was very, very unpopular. Very clearly, when Modi said, I will not give free power, in fact, he gives nothing free in his state, by the way. He's created a situation where his state has the lowest unemployment in the country. So rather than give somebody a freebie, create an enabling environment that he gets a job. That's his philosophy. Now, when we are in government, we have been in government in the center, in the past, in the states. I think if you have in your mind the ambition to empower people, but keep empathy intact. So in the sense, you can't say that that you can completely do away with subsidies tomorrow, for example. Okay, affirmative action is also an important tool for governments in the interim. Now, whether that affirmative action is an interim measure or is it a permanent measure is the challenge before government. I think for far too long, we have looked at institutionalizing poverty. For governments to have the people poor and deprived and dependent on government is very convenient for votes. So you can do a loan waiver sometime. You can promise some sort of food subsidy, which really is only a farce what they have promised. I can speak more on that.
I have two questions. One is this current government, I think, didn't engage with the states very well. And a lot of projects was because of that reason. So how do you plan to better engage with the states? And secondly is related to governance is an active judiciary. Now it's debatable whether it is right or wrong, whether they've overdone it, but How do you plan to handle that?
Thank you.
She has mentioned two lines in the budget speech that the 3 odd lakh crores of entitlements have been shifted to the states. Throw some light on that.
Well, he knew very well that he's going to be consigned to history. So he decided that instead of even allowing the central government of the future 3 months later to run better policies and programs, he said we'll shift that money also to the states so that any future potential government will not be able to actually drive that investment boost that I'm talking of. But anyway, that was, I don't know what was the intention behind it. If he wanted to do it, he could have done it for the last 10 years that he was in power. All these fanciful moves at the end of 10 years. I mean, he said one rank, one pension. It's a great thing. We have been fighting for it for 15, 20 years. We started the process when Vajpayee was in power, but unfortunately, before we could implement it, we lost government. These guys have thrice announced in budget implementation of one rank, one post. But in the fine print, they never did it. Now he's done it again and provided 500 crores. Again, the math. 500 crores over 30 lakh pensioners comes to 140 rupees a month.
I certainly don't think we can achieve one rank, one pension in 140 rupees per pensioner.
I met Mr. Anthony after the budget 3 days back. And I said, sir, we've been fighting on this for so many years. 2-3 years I've been fighting with him for this in the consultative committee. I said, every time you said there's not enough money, if it was only 500 crores, you could have done it long back. At least for our Jawans, we owe them that much. He said, no, it will require a little more money. I said, sir, little more money also we could have provided. No, little more money. So all of these are fanciful ideas at the end of a failed government. The states, we understand the angst of the states. Why did Vajpayee never have a problem when he introduced VAT? He left it to the states to choose, and within a year and a half, all the states came online. GST, we had started with the same spirit. We had said we'll compensate any state which has a loss. This government, after 2 years, stopped compensating the states. States lost faith in the central government. I think dealing with the states, you need sincerity. You need a consensus building exercise. And Modi, having been at the receiving end for 12 years, I promise you understands the problems of the states better than anybody else. You know, we've never had prime ministers who've actually been CMs for as long as 12 years. So we'll finally have a person who understands the state level problems. And the second question, judiciary has 3 pain issues. A, I think we need to fast track the heinous and volume issues. So you can't mix everything on a timeline basis. You'll have to segregate issues which are of national importance, which have an impact on maybe 500,000 other cases, fast track that, bring it to closure. So you would actually be solving many cases at a time. You need to look at double shift, triple shift working of judiciary. Certainly need more judges. India has the lowest judge ratio to anywhere else in the world, even lower than Pakistan and Bangladesh. You need to have amnesty schemes come out. I'm not talking of tax amnesties and all, but on petty crimes. I mean, today you have a situation where if I've done an agitation, you know, we do political agitations and all. If I do an agitation against price rise and break a police barricade, which we all do all the time, there may be a case 20 years back registered against me. It's in the books. I may get a notice today to come and appear for that. I have some cases on my mother for such political agitation, okay, where now the judge wants to close the cases because they were breaking the police barricade on a case like this, on a matter like this, political agitation. The problem is there are 160 people in that case. In 20 years, those 160 could never be contacted to come together. We don't even know if they are dead or alive. So the case cannot be closed because the law says all 60 have to appear before him to close the case. So for donkey's years, she's been appearing religiously every time that case is on board. And because everybody is not there, it gets adjourned. She must have made some 30, 40 appearances so far. We need just a little common sense way to find solutions to these things. That I promise you will do that.
Hi, sir. Couple of questions. One is on the basic process of doing business in India. If you look at it, a lot of corporates will tell you that some of our laws are quite antiquated, like on the environmental front, forest front, 100 permissions are required. So, what's the thought process on that? And second is that any thoughts on the PSU bank capitalization process? Because that's been something a lot of
Subjects
us have
very,
looked
very
up
dear
with.
to my heart,
So,
young man.
2.5 lakh crores is the number being talked about. So
Very,
any
very
ideas
dear
on that?
subjects to my heart, both of them, since I've been on the board. I've been on the board of 2 banks, State Bank and Bank of Baroda. We, of course, disinvested pretty steeply during our time. Not only banks, but even loss-making companies. Often we got the stick for that. Oh, you sold the Centaur Hotel cheap or whatever. I still think we did a wise hotel. Maybe the final beneficiary of that may not have been a great guy. Or he may not have managed that hotel very well. But our intention was clear. We did everything transparently through bidding process. And going forward, I certainly think managements of public sector units first need to be sorted out. They need to come back into the black like we did with the power or many other PSUs in Gujarat. And then possibly we need a larger and more diversified ownership of the public who can hold those managements to account. Like in Coal India, you had a private equity investor or somebody who actually almost held that company to account for its inefficiencies. Finally, I think government intervened, unfortunately, for whatever happened is a different story. I think I'm very convinced that banks do need capital, but it does not have to come out of government. We can either look at the holding company structure, which RBI has put out a note on, and I'm a big votary or a fan of that, without diluting the management control of these banks, because that's a sensitive issue. We could superimpose a holding company on top, let the economic interests of the government go to the holding company, and disinvest at the holdco level, so that at 2 or 3 stages, the economic interest of the banks may come down, the government holding. But the management still has an element of government control because they are serving a very large public interest purpose also. But we'll have to professionalize management, maybe get CBI and all out of their back for bona fide decisions, and certainly not hold them to task for decisions taken to actually encourage industry unless it's proven malafide. So I think we can sort that out, A, by engaging with the private sector for better management of PSUs. We can laterally induct professional managers. The last time Air India made profit was when there was a private sector guy at the helm of affairs. I think Rajan Jetli. He had come in from ITC, now a private equity person. That's the last time Air India made profit. So I think it can be sorted out. It's not impossible. What is the first question was?
The regulatory regime, taxation laws,
Yeah, while I was writing my book, I actually asked 3 of the top law firms of India to give me how many laws there are at the center and the state. All 3 failed to give me. There is not even a data of how many laws are there in this country. And then we do a revamp after 100 years of the Companies Act and Direct Tax Code, and just only more complicated. So there are 350 clauses in the revised Companies Act which have rule-making powers. I challenge anybody in this country, forget all the laws, just any one law, the Companies Act, if we can any one of us can claim that we are 100% kosher on it. It's impossible. The law with 400 odd sections, 350 law-making provisions for subordinate legislation. You add all of that together. I mean, I shouldn't be referring to the late Nani Palkiwala here, but I suspect you would have also lost time. So I think I agree with you, we need to revamp, really simplify the whole process and remove discretion largely.
I think we're running out of time, so maybe we take one more question.
Somebody here?
Yeah. two quick.
Why not take 3, 4, 5 questions? Then I'll do a summing up. So whoever
Okay.
wants to ask the question,
Okay.
I'll try to address all of that.
Okay, sure. Two quick points, if time permitting. One, I'm the odd man out. I'm a medical professional, so just wanted your views on what kind of a national health policy that we would be looking at. Because so far we've in all the talk of growth and progress and moving forward, many a times the health policy of the nation gets in the back row, and that's hugely important. And we've sort of failed miserably over the last few decades in that sense. So that is one point. And second, just to a comment on taking from your point and points made earlier on the process of this financial jugglery and putting the liabilities onto the next government. I mean, with the desperate Congress, and we all see it every single day, the desperation being worse and worse, and the viciousness becoming worse. A classic scorched earth thing is happening right now, and so we have all of 3 or 4 months till the next government is in place, and if BJP comes with a huge plan, it will still come saddled with all the destruction of
I answered
institutions.
that earlier. We'll have to accept it, we can find solutions.
Right.
We all of us know that we have problems in hands, and as you mentioned, solution towards that is a good governance, control inflation, and create jobs. But we really don't see the roadmap to achieve all this. That is number one. Number two is, as we know, the larger part of our voters are in rural area, and as you mentioned, 56% of Indian population is not below poverty line, but as you mentioned, the below empower line. How do you plan, and how
This little, in the media, the situation seems to be a little funny. I just wanted to, get your view on this, that the way the elections are being projected, Mr. Modi seems to be incumbent and Congress seems to be a challenger. Where more and more BJP is defending, whereas, Congress should be defending. And the entire election is being fought. I don't know whether it will play for BJP, play against, but is there some flaw where you have allowed the entire situation where, yeah.
You have in your mind the ambition to empower people, but keep empathy intact. So in the sense, you can't say that you can completely do away with subsidies tomorrow, for example. Okay, affirmative action is also an important tool for governments in the interim. Now, whether that affirmative action is an interim measure or is it a permanent measure is the challenge before government. I think for far too long, we have looked at institutionalizing poverty. For governments to have the people poor and deprived and dependent on government is very convenient for votes. So you can do a loan waiver sometime, you can promise some sort of food subsidy, which really is only a farce what they have promised. I can speak more on that. I think what Modi ji realized is that I will have to empower my people. So he attracted industry, he attracted manufacturing. He signed up Amitabh Bachchan to go and advertise his tourism and attract tourists into his state. He's created some of the finest roads. When I was to go to Baroda last Saturday, I was looking for flights to Baroda, and a person in Modi ji's office said, come to Ahmedabad and drive. I said, why? It must be pretty long. He said, no, 1 hour. Wow, I said, I can't believe it. Ahmedabad, Baroda, 1 hour? How long? How far is it? 120 kilometers. Gadkari made the Mumbai-Pune expressway. Record time, 3.5 years. Cost, the same company whose reference you have taken just now, had paid, they were the sole bidders at 3,200 odd crores. PWD estimate was 1,800 crores. There's a lot of pressure to give the contract to the bidder. It was a bidding process, transparent like hell. Mr. Gadkari said, no, my estimate is 1,800. Even if it was 2,000, I would give it thinking that government estimates always go wrong. But I can't give it at 3,200. I'll do it, but the government will do it itself. The Mumbai-Pune expressway was made in 1,600 crores. And to date, 15 years later, I think we can drive at 120, 130, maybe more. Not a pothole. And that's not something which comes out of maintenance. It's because the original product was honest. In the original product, quality standards were set. And you know how Mr. Gadkari would approve the contractor's bills? Every weekend. Raja knows about it. Every weekend, Gadkari ji would himself drive on whichever patch was getting ready. And wo cup bashi hoti hai na? Cup and saucer. He would pour the tea on a saucer and slurp it the way people do. And he said, if that tea falls on my kurta pajama, he doesn't wear kurta, on my trousers, your bill doesn't get paid. I think rustic common sense as against our Harvard standards. But the intention, the point I'm trying to make is, project could be set up in time by the government, less cost than the PWD estimate, and good quality. It's possible. So even in government, I don't think there's a contradiction in terms. If your sincerity of purpose is there, I see no contradiction. It can be done. The gas that you alluded to, where you started from, look, I'm very clear. We'll have to balance all interests. While the consumer interests obviously cannot be lost sight of, you'll also have to study in entirety the whole issue to assess what is that value at which the risk-reward matrix is best set. People are encouraged to explore more. After all, we can't keep importing for the rest of our lives. Or have the gas and oil in the water, and by the time we finally do explore it, some alternate fuel comes and all of this is wasted. Well, we've only imported for years on end. Or we can't have a situation where mines have fires for, Jharia mines have fires for 20 years. We can't fix a fire in a mine. Or we can't have a situation where we bring the coal from the surface and don't employ technologies to go down, just to keep a price artificially low and show a profit in Coal India, which is probably one of the most inefficiently run companies in India. And most corrupt companies, I say that on record. So what we need is, I mean, the other day somebody asked me, how will you sort out Coal India? I said, maybe send the army for 3 months. So I think an honest leadership can find that price, which is the right price considering costs, considering the risk-reward ratio, and considering consumer interests. We in the Finance Committee asked for this data. The government, Finance and Petroleum Ministry failed to provide us what they have done, how they have done this. And we've written to the government under Yashwant Sinha that this whole issue needs to be re-examined. But it needs to be re-examined not with a vindictive mind. And I said, this was the first question, by the way, in Kolkata, exactly 2 weeks back. No, not even 2, 8 days back, Saturday before last. In 9 days back. First question. Obviously, they thought Piyush ka maza lete hain thoda. And I said, look, why do we deride success? Why are we so anti-success also? Yes, if there's corruption, take the guy to the cleaners. I mean, just be unrelenting, like he was with the power theft or in his state about everything. But don't be jealous of somebody who's successful. I mean, we need asset and wealth creators. How else is this country ever going to progress?
Thank you, Piyush. Can we take questions from the floor, sir?
Hi, Piyush. So, listen, the question is not economic, right? But we've got to deal with, I mean, let's say you're speaking to the preach today, right? But how do we deal with the disruptive situation at a national level than what we've seen in Delhi in the last month or two when we were in touch also? So is there a risk management strategy for BJP to deal with this? Because, I mean, you've got to take some lessons out of that, right? So what happens here?
Well, of course, one of the lessons was that we probably delayed taking some political decisions in Delhi, because of which we lost a lot of the traction, which otherwise we could have gained, considering we had already announced Mr. Modi as Prime Ministerial candidate. The local leadership was in a disarray. I mean, it's a public fact, so I can say it on record. We lost our good opportunity. Otherwise, it was a clear, we did get 32 seats and we were just 2 short or 3 short. A lot of lessons to be learned. We've learned the lessons. The nation has learned the lesson the hard way also. I think apart from me, the nation also is seeing what has happened. 2 or 3 things I'd like to highlight. One is, it can't be done only by me. I'm working my whatever out to get Modi an absolute majority. But I think that's why I appeal to all of you. Sacrifice a little bit of your life for the nation. That is what will make a difference. I mean, why can't Mumbai, and each one of us has hometowns and villages and manufacturing or whatever companies wherever we've invested and whatnot. Why can't all of us think of every vote as precious? I'm sure you're aware, C.P. Joshi, the current union minister, lost the assembly election by 1 vote. Last election, 2008, 1 vote. And the joke is, he didn't ask his wife to go and vote. He actually told his wife in the afternoon, but jarurat nahi hai, main to jeet raha hu. And his wife didn't vote. So every single vote counts. So if each one of us were to play a role, and by the way, even in Delhi, we lost 8 seats by less than, in the aggregate, 2,400 votes. So what you saw, this whole charade, is the result of 2,400 votes. If that much more votes my 8 seats I had got, we were at 40, which is what we had estimated. So I promise you, we are working hard. ताली दूसरे हाथ से आप लोग बजाइए सब. Second point I'll just make, I said I'll make 2 points. The second point is, research the elections of the last 5 years. The 2009 Lok Sabha and every state election in the last 5 years. India has voted decisively. Voters are getting smart. When they want to reward a good government, they give him a good victory. When they want to throw out a bad government, they throw him out decisively. See what happened in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and in Rajasthan. 163 seats in Rajasthan. My God, in 67 years it has never happened. Bhairav Singh Shekhawat, who was our tallest leader, got a max of 90 or 93 seats, or 95, out of 200. 163, I mean, we didn't imagine. At best, we were at 130, the most optimistic scenario. If you see every election, Akhilesh Yadav, people wanted to throw out Mayawati. BJP and Congress didn't inspire confidence. They didn't waste their vote on us. We got 40 or something, I don't know, 45 or something, 50. Akhilesh, whom every pollster, even after polling, said will get about 150, 160, got about 230. Other than Jharkhand, other than one state of Jharkhand, 27 other states voted decisively. 2009 Lok Sabha. Both Congress and BNP keep exchanging votes. Even after the elections were at 150, 160. Whoever pips the other forms the count. They got 206, we were down to 116. People vote wisely. थोड़ा उनको सपोर्ट, गाइडेंस, एजुकेशन अगर आप लोग दे दें तो थोड़ा वाइजर और हो जाएंगे और उसमें से शायद वो 20-25 सीटें निकल आएंगी, which is the probably the current gap between an absolute majority and a.
So, when the BJP comes to power in a few months, they will, in a sense, be entering a very financially weak situation, as you've spoken about, high debt, high inflation, low growth, etc., etc. Sowing the seeds that have been sown in the current government, they will be reaping this. So, what is the first 100-day plan for the party?
When we were discussing Modi's speech of the 27th, last 3-4 days we've been working on that. Not that we will write a speech, but we've been trying to see what are the real, as I said, issues that the people are most concerned about. One of the issues that was flagged off was, do we present a 100-day agenda? I think you don't even need a 100-day agenda. You need a 1-day agenda. You need an agenda to tell the people that every decision I take will be honest, so that when you invest in my country, you don't have to worry that a license that I've issued under the seal of the President of India tomorrow can be cancelled. You don't have to worry that my laws can be retroactively amended, and you can be taxed for an action. And incidentally, Mr. Jetli and I are the only two parliamentarians in the whole of both the houses who stood up, opposed retrospective taxation. I have publicly opposed it on many forums, in and out of television studios. And I have made a commitment, and I repeat that commitment, that our government will make no retrospective amendment in any tax law. If at all we make an amendment which is in public interest, it will be prospective or it will grandfather the past. Similarly, in terms of confidence of the investing community or the kickstart of the economy that is required, we need to encourage bankers. We need to give them confidence that their decisions on commercial considerations will be respected. We need to, as I said earlier, see where the capital is going to come from, wherever there are shortages of capital and projects are stuck. We probably need to have a moratorium on government projects so that we finish all the incomplete railway lines, incomplete highway projects. We need to sit down. I mean, I was suggesting the other day, 50 members of the cabinet, each one should be made in charge of 5 projects and said that, damn it, these 5 projects you monitor on a daily basis. And these 250 stuck projects, which are some 7 lakh crores of stuck investment, you can have going within 100 days, if you ask me. So really, the confidence in the economy which has got shattered, to reignite the investment cycle, is that one single agenda which will set your supply side right, which will probably bring the inflation under control, which will help bankers get back into action, which will get projects which are stalled, get kick-started, and possibly the 1 or 2, 3 things that I think can make a difference. For example, the kind of tax cases that have come to my notice in the last 1 or 2 years. I was told a large technology company which employs 125,000 people in this country and had plans to ramp up to 150,000 has just scrapped all investment plans. Why? They had returned an income, a loss of 300 crores. They have been given an assessment order of 11,000 crores. A loss of 300 crores has been assessed as an income of 11,000 crores. Their fault? They used to do pro forma invoices when they supplied to distributors. When the distributors sold to the retailers, they did an in pro forma invoice, and then the retail sold. The actual sale would be billed into the books, and the other 2 would be, or whatever, would be reversed. Any chartered accountants here, this is typical accounting practice. Some fancy footloose tax official has aggregated all those sales and added 11,000 crore rupees to their turnover. I had the other day a very large oil major of the UK who's now got out of India, fortunately probably for him, come to meet me to try and understand what we will do after that. I said, I have no solution to your problem. He's just received a letter, not a tax demand or anything, a letter saying that when he had reorganized his shareholding in 2006, reorganized, the economic interest did not change. So I own my company. I transfer my shareholding from my company to another of my company with no change in economic interest. He had reorganized the shareholding to bring it into one entity and gone public, which I think we all do, right? He's just received a letter saying that we want to know more about this. Therefore, the $1 billion of residual stake you have in your Indian operation cannot be sold now. And we have to investigate this issue of about 11,000 crores or some figure he said, I don't remember. So those foreigners came running from the UK, and you know why? As in India, they have to announce if they receive any such potential contingent liability. The day they announced it, their equity value market cap fell by 600 million pounds. And that $1 billion investment that they still hold is now got frozen. So they had some capital investment plans in UK out of that $1 billion, which was to be just offered to the public, is done. And they say that this one letter is causing anguish in our capex plans in UK, because of which potentially 1 year later, UK will have a power crisis. I don't think it needs rocket science or even 100 days to call that officer and find out what the hell he's trying to do. It just needs, ma'am, a little bit of understanding, rustic, basic sense to sort this out. I actually escalated it to the Honorable Minister of Finance at the state level, who looks after revenue, right? So I escalated these issues to the Minister of Revenue. He couldn't understand it from Adams. All he did was call up the commissioner of that place and say, Mr. Goyal has some tax issues. You all are harassing an honorable member of parliament. So I think, ma'am, it's not rocket science. This nation can be set right. Vajpayee inherited a similar economy. Look at the situation in '98. Just go to the net tonight.
My question is about 2004. What are the lessons and how do you prevent that from reoccurring in 2019? I'm looking ahead.
I'm not even waiting for 2019.
As we all of us know that we have problems in hands, and as you mentioned, solution towards that is a good governance, control inflation, and create jobs. But we really don't see the roadmap to achieve all this. That is number one. Number two is, as we know, the larger part of our voters are in rural area, and as you mentioned, 56% of Indian population is not below poverty line, but as you mentioned, the below empower line. How do you plan, and how
in the media, the situation seems to be a little funny. And just wanted to, get your view on this, that the way the elections being projected, Mr. Modi seems to be incumbent and Congress seems to be a challenger. Where more and more BJP is defending, whereas, Congress should be defending, and the entire election is being fought. I don't know whether it will play for BJP, play against, but is there some flaw where you have allowed the entire situation where...
Yeah. Anybody else?
Sir, I have actually a point to make. Yeah, it's not a question. You are talking about the infra, you are talking about the banking. One of the point which is in public domain, that if you solve only power sector reforms, 2% GDP growth will go up. Only because of one sector if you can address. And many of these issues in that sector is low-hanging fruits. So one of the first priorities of new government should be to address those.
I think, allude to that quite a bit.
Yeah. If you could give some insight into the education reforms.
And this is not necessarily with reference to BJP, but a question that all of us ask, that while we keep talking about economic reforms and movement on that front, how should the next government target the whole issue of communalism? And as I said, it's not necessarily with reference to BJP, but we still see riots happening as late as the whole UP riot. How does the government sort out with what I believe will be a larger issue at hand?
With the understanding of population of youth becoming so large, we don't see anything which is being spoken about sports. I think that's the biggest youth power, biggest youth power that we have, and we are not making any utility of that in any of our countries.
Great point.
Just one bit
One question. What? Yeah. Here.
In 98 to 2004, under the Vajpayee government, we were pro-reform, and yet we lost the general election. While in 2009, Congress introduced Manrega, and they did win. So what are we going to do? I know we are pro-reform, but yet there is something we need to address.
One line. What are your thoughts on labor reforms?
You want me to lose my job, huh? Is that it? Yeah. Thanks. Thank you very much. I think at the end of it, we could actually craft out my BJP manifesto end of this meeting, you know. Great. On health, sir, I'm a great fan of Devi Shetty. Okay, that model what I saw over there, where really what Modi ji also talks of speed, scale, I saw it in front of my eyes. I saw an ICU, children's pediatric ICU, right? On one floor, which was about 4 times this room. There were 200 beds, ICU beds. Basic facilities, no frills. No Mumbai airport there. The absolute basic facility. But on each one of those beds, the necessary equipment was there. An incubator was there because these were very, very small infants actually, not even pediatric. And there was a lady nurse. What Devi did is, he brought healthcare quality, he brought healthcare a passion. Each one of his people are passionate about their work. He brought in scale. So an ECG that you do in Breach Candy or any other hospital or a government hospital may be worse, which costs some $100 or something. In his hospital costs 2 rupees. He's changed the rules of the game. His ECG machine works 24 hours. His ECG paper is not that thermal paper. It's an ordinary paper. Like remember the Xerox of the old days and then moved to regular paper. He brought in insurance, realizing a scheme, Arogya Shri or Arogya Nidhi. He realized that when a person gets ill, his life goes to the cleaners. He just can't afford that healthcare. But if you equalize that over 30 million or 50 million people, the total amount to each one becomes really small. And in that, then you only have to subsidize the really poor. Okay? He brought in an insurance policy which provided for 1,800 different types of operations, free of charge. There's a schedule of rates, a schedule of the quality that will go into that treatment. He upgraded the government hospitals, trained the people, and said, now you have to fend for yourself. So people are free to go to any government hospital, any private hospital for that treatment. 1,800 types of operations, knee surgery, heart, neurological, everything included. And then if the government hospital doesn't earn enough money, then either he gets closed, he gets replaced, he got to work, something like the voucher system. Right? So I think we need a revamp towards outcomes and not really only talk of outlays on health. We can sort it out. If we equalize the length and breadth of the nation. And the second thing is preventive. I worked out a scheme. I was advised that the largest killer, not life and death, but expense on health, sincere on health, is the water quality. Stomach-related problems and sanitation. As Modi said, Shauchalay first, Devalay baad mein. I wish I could actually take out my book before the election. A lot of your questions would come into that. I worked out what does it cost to provide every person in India 20 liters of potable water. Clean water, purified, which can be used for a family of 5 for their drinking and cooking needs. 20 liters is all that it takes. And in total cost of that, on a capex basis, is about 20,000 crores, one time. And OPEX is about 12,000 crores for the poor, assuming that we can afford it. That's it. Imagine the impact that would have on healthcare. So we need to look at preventive healthcare on a more focused basis. I can't go into more detail because really we don't even have time. financial Jaggery I had addressed earlier. The 2004 lessons, young man, I think somebody asked me there. Yeah, you. We goofed up on overconfidence. We goofed up on our alliances. And possibly the fruits of our efforts were yet to see the light of day. We talked of India shining a little prematurely. We had set the fisc right. We had done the right moves. We had brought in jobs. We had created the right story. But the story had just begun. Instead of preponing that election, if you would have waited our time, let it seep in a little longer. Also, the other lesson we learnt, and very often you friends like you tell me, अरे यार ये अभी गाली देना बंद करो, ये negative campaign बहुत सुन लिया, positive पे आओ, क्या करोगे? That's the mistake we did in 4. In November, we started talking of India shining, feel good.
We started saying the good things, the feel good factor. We started showing people all that we have done, the good work. Come December, January, they said, okay, yaar, ye sun liya, ab aage kya? And then they started talking, nahi par to ye to kar diya, par we needed more. The negative story has a much longer shelf life.
The positive narrative has a very short shelf life, which we are now coming out. " 2014 is our year, sir. Please work for 2014. Somebody said I had no roadmap. My God, I've lost my voice.
If this was not a roadmap, I'm sorry, I don't have it. Rural India. Yeah, you only asked.
Again, I did not allude to that much because I thought this audience is a little different. But again, my track record. Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat. Madhya Pradesh, Shivrajji I met a few days back. He was in Delhi to receive an award for consistently performing well in agriculture. Last year, agricultural growth, 18 or 19%. Gujarat, the only state which has consistently outperformed India, and not outperformed, double the national growth in agriculture. We didn't have 70,000 crore rupees scams like Maharashtra, so-called honest chief minister, who doesn't even act on that. We've actually irrigated, we brought water to the length and breadth of Gujarat. Madhya Pradesh, the irrigated area in Madhya Pradesh has grown some 3x under Shivraj Singh Chauhan.
Agriculture needs what? Needs power, not free power. Low cost, clean power, quality power. Not something which comes at 12 o'clock in the night and goes away at 4 o'clock. So the guy, before he goes to sleep, switches on the pump and then leaves it on. पानी आते रहेगा, waste होते रहेगा. बिजली भी waste होगी, पानी भी flood करेगा soil को और soil को भी खराब कर देगा. Flooding of soil is also bad for the soil. Fertilizer prices. This government subsidizes urea.
Remove fertilizer subsidy on everything else. So urea is cheap. Everything else is 4 times the price which it was 10 years ago. What does the farmer do? Pushes urea into his land. He can't afford the other fertilizer. So you have a surplus of urea going into the soil. It has messed up the soil quality of India. You need to bring in technology into agriculture. You need to have a soil card for each field. You need to provide seeds. In fact, a large industrialist who's now into retail and therefore was getting into contract farming told me his farmers were buying seed at 50,000 rupees a kilo for some value-added product, cash crop. He bought in bulk from abroad, provided to his farmers where he was engaging in contract farming.
5,000 rupees. Need innovative thinking to sort out the agriculture. Yeah.
There is a 40,000 crore budget for innovations in agriculture. Till today, zero has been utilized.
My friend, there's thousands and thousands of crores for afforestation. Only in Karnataka, I know there's a 12,000 crore rupee surplus collected from mining and all that for afforestation, just lying in the banks. Incidentally, since you talked of science and technology, I would urge all of you when you go back, there is a document that says implementation of budget promises. People don't read the budget in detail, वो headline numbers or again जो CNBC बोलते हैं, that is the budget for us. Please read that document, implementation of budget promises. Skill Development Corporation was given 1,000 crores last year, zero spent, withdrawn. 1,000 crores this year, 300 crores spent. The target to skill was 90 lakhs in the year, current year. How much has the skilling been done? 3 lakhs. 3 lakhs against a target of 90 lakhs. Of which majority is private sector, 80,000 by the government. Poor Mr. Ramadurai, I met him 2-3 Saturday, I think. I was telling him, sir, we'll come and we'll empower you, and I talked to him about the Manrega idea. I'd actually talked to him earlier also. I said, sir, आपसे implement कराएंगे और आपको ये पैसा देंगे जिससे आप 20 crore लोगों को skill कर सकते. So a lot can be done. I'm just completely out of voice. मीडिया का देखो एक चीज से ना, briefly I'll tell you. One horse race अगर हो जाए ना, तो media will be out of business. I mean, if it was Modi all the way, then I think you would switch off Times Now also, right? There will be no spice in the debate. So you have to expect media to spice it up, and they're doing their job. We have to do ours.
Yeah, but instead of Congress defending, here it is BJP which is defending.
देखिए, जहाँ तक कांग्रेस डिफेंडिंग और बीजेपी डिफेंडिंग, वो डिबेट चलती रहेगी. आज जनता, भारत की जनता ने 6-7 चुनाव में दिखा दिया है कि वो बड़े चतुर हैं, वो एंड में करेक्ट डिसीजन ले लेते हैं. और मुझे विश्वास है इस बार it's almost like a 1977 repeat what we are seeing in India. I mean, मुंबई की रैली हमारे यहीं पे थी ना, बीकेसी में. I was on the stage. We couldn't see the end of the rally from the stage. कहाँ रैली खत्म हो रही है हमको दिख नहीं रहा था. That was the kind of response, and it's pan India. Patna, bombs were going off. Can you imagine? एक फटाका फटता है तो स्टैम्पीड में 300-400 लोग मर जाते हैं. वहां तो 6 या 7 बॉम्ब जा चुके थे. एक बॉम्ब मिला 50 मीटर स्टेज के दूर. I mean, I almost suspect the government's hand in the whole thing. But Mr. Modi, and he was advised at the airport कि आप यहीं से चले जाओ, वहां बॉम्ब फट रहे हैं. Imagine अगर वो वहां से चले गए होते कायर की तरह, और वहां अनाउंस होता मोदी इज नॉट कमिंग बिकॉज 7 बम फटे हैं आप लोग के बीच में. There would have been a stampede, maybe 4,000-5,000 people at least would have died. और वो 5 लाख लोग जिस आक्रोश में जाते, जो कम्युनलिज्म की बात किसने उठाई, उस आक्रोश में आगे क्या होता भगवान भरोसे, भगवान जाने क्या होता. बट माई लीडर वेंट टू द वेन्यू. वी केप्ट अनाउंसिंग ये कुछ नहीं है, ये सिर्फ फटाके, सेलिब्रेटरी फटाके. आफ्टर हिज स्पीच गॉट ओवर, इफ एनी ऑफ यू हर्ड, ही अपील्ड विथ फोल्डेड हैंड्स कि मुझे आप पे भरोसा है कि आप यहाँ से शांतिपूर्वक घर जाओगे. जब तक एक एक व्यक्ति यहाँ जो 5 लाख लोग इकट्ठे हुए हैं अपने घर नहीं पहुंच जाता शांति से, तब तक मैं नहीं सोऊंगा. मेरे भरोसे को मत तोड़ना, प्लीज गो पीसफुली. आखिर बात तो शुरू हो ही गई थी, टीवी वगैरह रेडियो पे आने लग गया था बॉम्ब फटे. ही अपील टू माई वर्कर्स, माई सपोर्टर्स, माई वेल विशर्स. It's our responsibility, and he trusts us to maintain that peace and harmony. That is leadership. That is what we are offering the nation. Power sector, I think I spoke a lot about it. Education reform again goes to outcome versus outcome. What are we doing? We are just enrolling people into schools and saying 100% enrollment. And then when there's a PISA ranking, that performance and assessment, किसका है? एसर की जो स्टडी है, PISA ranking में we came 73rd out of 70. 5th standard boy could not read a 2nd standard or do multiplication of math. And then we found a solution. I mean, we are ingenious. As a nation, we are ingenious. We sorted it out in a jiffy, like somebody wanted a 100-day agenda. We stopped participating in PISA rankings after that. I think we can set education right. instead of bringing in rules like 25% compulsory admission, instead of saying क्या किया दिल्ली में 6 किलोमीटर के रेडियस के बाहर या कितने के बाहर आपको नहीं जा सकते. अरे कितने इलाके हैं जहां उस रेडियस के अंदर कोई अच्छा स्कूल ही नहीं है, तो आदमी वंचित रहेगा अच्छी पढ़ाई अच्छी तालीम से. I think what we need to do is again maybe look at vouchers or something. I talked to Ashish Dhawan in great detail. He's an ex-Chris, आपकी बिरादरी का है कई लोगों के यहाँ. Ashish is doing brilliant work in education, and I've been inspired by his work. I've learned a lot from him.
We could possibly give an education voucher instead of just enrolling people into schools and say pick a school of your choice. Go and get good quality education. We could possibly request a good school like Ambani here that okay, run your school in the day, in the night, run an equally good school. I'm sure Mrs. Ambani would gladly
use her facility to run an equally good quality education school in the night for 1,200 poor children. There are so many innovative ways to think about it. BPT में हजारों एकड़ जमीन complicated legal entanglements में पड़ी है. We could set up some good high quality schools in those places. We don't need to invest in more infrastructure. We need to invest in soft skills. I actually flew down to Bangalore. मैं book की वजह से काफी research कर रहा हूँ. तो Rajiv Chandrasekhar is an MP with me. His brother-in-law is with Cisco.
He actually wanted to meet me for other issues, but when I met him and realized what's the potential of technology for healthcare and education, I flew down to Bangalore, went to Cisco, took a demo of their new technologies.
And the world opened up, world of opportunities opened up before my eyes. We need to bring technology into health and education. We can do wonders with our current outlet. I mean, one good teacher could reach out to 100,000 students interactively. And by the way, we're already testing out our programs. If you know, we did Chai Pe Charcha at 1,000 locations simultaneously last week. 16th it was, I think. 1,000 locations simultaneously, Modi was on air. Out of which 32 was two-way, interactive. I need to duplicate that in healthcare and education. Reforms, communalism, I mean, this track record, 12 years, peace. Every BJP state has had peace.
The communalism card is a absolutely abhorrible, divisive vote bank politics that nearly all other parties have played. We are proud that our policy is appeasement of none and justice for all. We will stick by that policy. When Sajjan committee went to Gujarat and demanded of Modi, what are you doing for the minorities?
He said nothing. I said, what? We'll have to report you. He said, you report what you like. I have no special scheme for anybody. I work for 6 crore Gujaratis as Chief Minister, and he will work for 120 crore Indians as Prime Minister. In his state, he doesn't tell you when you set up a plant, don't give a job to a Muslim person, give it only to a Hindu. He doesn't say, I've made good roads only for Hindus and not for Muslims. When his unemployment is near zero, the lowest in the country. You know, 72% of jobs in the last few years out of employment exchanges nationally are only out of Gujarat. 72% out of Gujarat. He never tells you don't employ a minority. You know, the Muslims of Gujarat are far better off than any other state in India. The zakat, they pay a zakat to their religious community, I think to fund Hajj pilgrimage, is the highest in Gujarat. So all this is propaganda. The courts have absorbed him of any, and he always said, if I am found guilty, please hang me. Don't ever pardon me. I think that issue has come to an end. Today, the people of India trust him. Probably the only trustworthy leader we have in the race for Prime Minister today. Sports is very passionate for me. I'll address it separately. I just can't handle anymore. Labor, Gujarat has zero labor trouble. The laws are the same. And I think, frankly, labor laws have today become quite easy to navigate. Europe and America have worse labor laws than India. But having said that, I'm sure we can find some innovative ways without hire and fire to protect the legitimate interests of labor while simultaneously ensuring that harassment of management does not take place. I think I've largely addressed.
Piyush, thank you so much for being so charitable with your time. I'd like to invite Naresh to just say a few words of thanks and also, express our gratitude.
On behalf of India First, we thank you everyone being present here. And of course to Piyush for his very light and good evening that we have had today. This is a part of a big series that we are going to be having. This is the first of its kind. India First is opportunity. We will request all of you, whoever have not left their cards or visiting cards, please put it in the bowl there.
All that missed call.
All the missed calls so that we can...
800 200 1063.
And we would like more volunteers and more people to be part of this. Whoever was interested, please be ahead, come and meet us, and we'll be more than happy to be part of you. And once again, we'd like to give a flower bouquet to Piyush for having a great evening to us. Thank you, Piyush. We had a great evening today.